There are a great many things in the world that we talk about as if they were real, but they are just only judgments. You know, the only difference between a flower and a weed is a judgment, and that's true of people as well. Here's some things that don't exist in the world. Disasters, luck, a dumb bird, a normal attitude, a guarantee, a dreadful dress, a gorgeous hairdo, terrible language, a nice lady, an awful sight, a good boy, a stupid person. These are all judgments. And you have to learn the difference between judging and what is real. Some of the categories of where people dichotomize and judge are good and bad. They try to put the whole world into what is good and what is bad based upon some perception I have. And those things that don't fit into it the way I think they ought to be are bad, and all the things that I agree with are good. And so you find yourself going through your whole life running into half of the people or more who are doing things in a different way than you do and judging them all to be bad, and therefore being their victim because they now own your emotional strings. Remember, being a victim isn't necessarily a physical thing. In fact, that's very seldom the thing, because we have laws to protect each other from being physically abused by each other. It isn't as if somebody's putting you into a jail, into a cell. It is the victimization is what you experience in your mind and in your emotions. And this comes from judging, from categorizing, from compartmentalizing people and putting them into the compartments. And then when they don't fit with the behavior that you think they should exhibit, you find yourself upset and worked up and angry and hurt. Good and bad and right and wrong and beautiful and ugly. There's no beautiful people in the world. There's no ugly people in the world. People are just the way they are. They look exactly the way they do, the way they're supposed to look. They're part of the perfect intelligence that is in all things in the universe, that invisible intelligence that is within all of us. But if you categorize people that way, then you are finding yourself potentially a victim. It's really important to develop a quiet mind when it comes to all of this. A quiet mind is a mind that is at peace, a mind that doesn't judge. One of the things you learn about judgment is that you do not define anybody else with your judgments. You only define yourself as someone who needs to judge. Just because you label somebody else to be something, obnoxious or nasty or hurtful, doesn't mean that that's what they are. That's just your judgment, and that's your definition of yourself as someone who needs to judge. People are not defined by your judgments. People are defined by their own thoughts and their own actions that are subsequent to those thoughts. So learning not to judge and unclogging your mind, if you will, of judgments and negativity and quieting your mind. It's like if you could spend an hour a day in meditation. The great French philosopher and scientist Pascal said that all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. You sit quietly in a room alone and go within and discover that higher consciousness, whatever you want to call it, whether you call it God or soul or spirit or Louise, it doesn't make any difference what you label it. If you go within and discover that and spend time each day inside of yourself, just peacefully being there and asking the questions, how may I serve? And what is my purpose? And what can I do to make this life a better one? And how can I serve people rather than be victimized by them or victimizing anybody else? You find that developing that kind of a quiet, peaceful, serene mind is something that will allow you to process the whole world in a more peaceful way. And when you get to that point where you are aligning yourself spiritually, or you are aligning yourself with the invisible part of your humanity, the part that defies form, that doesn't begin and doesn't end, when you align yourself there, and that becomes your first priority, you start noticing that you don't get victimized as much. I've really noticed that as I've gotten myself on a higher spiritual path and a more peaceful path for myself and more at ease with myself, that I've begun to take much better care of my body, that I notice that when I don't expect people to be abusive towards me, that I hardly ever see it anymore. It's really rare that I see it. I know that when I get in the car and I have a 17-mile ride to go to my home from my office, and there's a lot of traffic lights and there's a lot of traffic and a lot of slow drivers and so on, I know that when I visualize in advance in my mind that this is going to be a very pleasant experience, and I see myself, if somebody's cutting me off in advance, that I see myself not allowing myself to be upset and depressed by that. I see myself going through that whole process of driving all the way home in advance. This is before I've even opened the car. And I sort of play it out in my mind. And then I get in and I just allow the physical now to follow the thought that I just had, the visualization that I just had. And sure enough, somebody will get in there and cut me off or drive slowly or whatever. And for me, it's like I just see them as part of the perfection of it all. They're exactly where they're supposed to be at that moment. I'm no longer a victim. I have aligned myself first with my mind, knowing that I can create in my mind what I want, and then not allowing myself to be victimized when those things occur. And as I do that, I go through my life, I find that as I am more peaceful and I send out more harmony and more love and more forgiveness and more kindness and more of all the things I've been talking about on this tape, if you send that out more, that's what you get back. If you send out hostility and pain and suffering and anger and wanting to make other people wrong and wanting to prove yourself all the time, if you send out that kind of energy from yourself, that's exactly what you're going to get back. Send out love, you'll get back love. Send out anger and impatience, and that's what you'll get. Pulling your own strings truly is about looking within and knowing that no one can make you a victim without your consent. No one.